Hi everyone, welcome back to week 9 of the AdSense 10 challenge. Today we're going to be focusing on meeting members of the AdSense community with a strong background in mobile. So for today's session, we're going to talk to a couple people, learn their backgrounds, talk about best practices and strategies. But before we begin, let's actually go around the room and meet our guests. Let's start with Matt, who you might recognize from yesterday's presentation. Matt, can you tell us, your name, your relationship with AdSense, and what brought you here today?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Matt Salisbury. I'm a mobile web product specialist for AdSense, and here really today to just offer a little perspective on how we think about mobile web and just mobile in general from our product specialist team.
All right, thanks Matt. Next, let's go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, can you give us a brief intro?
Yep. Hey everybody, my name is Elizabeth Douglas. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of WikiHow. WikiHow is an online wiki site where we are trying to teach everyone in the world how to do anything, and for free. And we've been working on monetization at WikiHow for a lot of years, for myself over 4 years. And one of the things we've done is a lot of AdSense optimization, in particular on mobile over the last couple of years as mobile's been growing.
All right, thanks Elizabeth. So some of you might also recognize our next two guests from previous sessions and Hangouts on Air. We thought it'd be helpful to bring them back and really give their perspective as well. With that in mind, Nick, can you give us a brief intro?
Hi everyone, my name is Nick Radicevic. I am a product manager for AdSense based in London.
Cool. Thanks Nick. And Russ, same thing. Can you give us a brief intro?
Sure, I'm Russ Ketchum. I'm the lead product manager for Google Analytics for mobile and also Google Tag Manager. And of course, when you link Google Analytics to AdSense, it unlocks a whole bunch of new reports. And so I'm here to talk about how that can play nicely with AdSense.
All right, thanks Russ. So let's get started with our questions. Basically, what I think is going to be helpful for us today is to kind of pick apart the presentation from yesterday, dive deeper into some topics, and get some examples to really help the concepts sink in. So with that in mind, let's go to the first question, which is, what is a mobile optimized site and why should it matter? For example, if I pull out my smartphone, type in my website's URL, hit search and look at it, and it looks fine to me, is that something you'd consider mobile optimized? Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's in general just a little bit of a fuzzy term. I think mobile optimized really means different things to different people, and even for different publishers or websites, one might have this idea of being mobile optimized that is completely different than some other publisher or some other site. In general, I feel like what mobile optimized traditionally means is you have users using a smaller device, and often the site's trying to take into account that a user might be on the go or they're not necessarily at their desktop, typing away. So that's, I guess, my definition of mobile optimized, and why it should matter is really you're kind of presented with more information about your users when you know that they're on a smaller screen and they could potentially be on the go. So, and at the same time, people, obviously we're pretty well aware of this, people are using mobile more and more and more. So I think if you can use that combination of more information about your users to really tailor the experience and why it matters, just people are using it a lot more these days. So.
All right, thanks Matt. Nick, any thoughts on what makes something mobile optimized?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to cover a few points, some of which are sort of common sense, and I think anybody building websites should already be familiar with. So the first one is to keep in mind that users on mobile devices will generally have a slower and possibly intermittent connection, data connection, and also the device that they're using has a smaller screen, usually less processing power and memory than a standard desktop computer. So this is important from a more technical point of view. When you're building the mobile version of your site, you want to make sure you're caching as much as possible and reducing the amount of data and resources need to be downloaded and executed for the mobile version of your page. I think it's pretty common sense, but it's worth reiterating. For those of you who are not familiar with it, Google has a page speed service that does a lot of technical analysis of the performance and structure of your website, and it does a great job now of analyzing mobile as well. So I recommend you try it. The second point is also relatively common sense. People using mobile devices tend to interact with it using their fingers mostly, which are far less precise than a mouse or a keyboard. So entering input is harder. Keep that in mind when designing UI elements. You want to have things that are easily clickable with a finger, which is less accurate, so links, buttons, drop-down boxes, and so on. Like you generally want to make it a pleasant rather than a frustrating experience to get the user to input the data and take actions that they want to take. Sort of hand in hand with that, it's also very important to think about what are the highest value scenarios, tasks, and content that you want the user to be able to either accomplish or consume when they visit your website from a mobile device. And in a way, sort of shepherd and funnel them towards those things. This may mean having a little bit of a trade-off by burying some of the other less important functionality in secondary screens or so, but it's sort of very valuable for a user to be able to accomplish and find what they want quickly and efficiently when on a mobile device, usually on the go. And finally, when you talk about ads and monetization, you should make sure that that fits in with your design of your website. On the AdSense side, we have a number of mobile ad formats, and they're specifically designed for smaller screens. And you should also consider placement as well when you look at where to put the ads on your page, on the mobile version of your page.
All right, thanks, Nick. So now that we have an understanding of what is mobile optimized site, and some of the reasons why it's so important, a follow-up question here would be, what are some strong indicators for our publishers that they should invest in a mobile site? Nick, what do you think?
So these days, it's essentially guaranteed that at least some of the visitors to your site will be coming from mobile devices, phones, tablets, you name it. I would say probably the easiest for AdSense publishers way to do this is to log into your account, go to Performance Reports, and do a platform breakdown. The platform breakdown will give you an idea of what kind of traffic and revenue you're getting from desktop versus high-end mobile devices versus tablet. So it's pretty much the most straightforward and easiest way to actually quantify how much traffic you're getting from mobile devices.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Matt, what do you think on some strong indicators?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Nick on a lot of things. I think, in general, some portion of your traffic is already on a mobile device. It's only going to continue. So in general, it seems like a lot of my recommendations are that you should have a mobile site. I guess if you're looking for really strong indicators that you should build one right now, you would have a large percentage of mobile traffic. And then also, kind of going back to our presentation yesterday, if you're in a vertical that knowing that your users might be on the go gives you a lot of valuable information about what they might want to do next. Like, for instance, our travel vertical yesterday, people want to check their flight status, whether it's on time, things like that. If you're in a particular vertical that a lot of your competitor sites are also mobile, that would probably be another strong indicator. But those are the two things that I typically look at. Large percentage of mobile traffic, and then if your vertical is also already moving in that direction.
All right. Thanks, Matt. And Russ, what type of indicators should our publishers look for in Google Analytics if they want to be going mobile?
Yeah, and I agree with the group. I mean, the real indicator is you want to watch the trend of your traffic and see how your users are actually interacting with your content. And on a Google Analytics side, we take what we call the ABCs of analytics approach to how we present our data. So that's acquisition, behavior, and conversion. And so part and parcel of that is understanding who your users or who your audience really is. And so for those familiar with Google Analytics, if you have it installed on your site, you can expand the audience section, and then there's part of standard reporting right there is a section called mobile. And if you click on the overview, that gives you the breakdown that we're talking about here. So you can see the percentage of people that are coming to your site and using it based on web, mobile, and also tablet split out as its own category.
All right. Thanks, Russ. Elizabeth, same question, and actually we'd love to hear, when did you decide to create a mobile optimized site for WikiHow?
So we actually built our first version of our mobile optimized site in early 2010. It became really, really clear to us that people searching for how-to content were going to be interested in how-to content either from their desktop or while on the go. In order to make it mobile optimized, we had to make some hard decisions. Obviously, on desktop, you have a lot more space, and you have a lot more opportunities to convert users into editors, as we're a wiki. And so we sort of took the strategy of if someone's on a phone, what do they need from WikiHow? And we didn't try to give them everything that WikiHow has on desktop. We tried to give them what they actually need when they're on their phone, which is a really easy site to look at. So like each step is really, really easy to parse. It's in a big font. We didn't try to cram a bunch of information onto the page. And basically our goal was to make sure that if you landed on WikiHow from your phone, that you were going to be able to parse and consume the how-to in a way that was really, really useful to you, even though your screen was a lot smaller. So we really, really thought about what it meant to be a really useful site for users on their phone, and that was how we figured out what trade-offs to make versus all the things that we get to put on the page on desktop.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, so for our next question, what happens to desktop traffic once you embrace mobile? Specifically, some publishers are worried that mobile will cannibalize their desktop traffic. Nick and Matt, what are your guys' thoughts here? How do you feel mobile cannibalizes desktop traffic, impacts our publishers? Nick, what do you think?
So I think this will obviously differ from publisher to publisher. My personal sort of view on things is that people shouldn't worry too much about this. A lot of mobile usage tends to be very complementary to desktop usage. People will use their devices on the go, in general situations where they don't have their desktop handy. So you can sort of think of it as incremental traffic in a way, because users will be able to reach your site when they usually couldn't. It's interesting. You can, as I said, on the performance report, you'll be able to see the flow of traffic. You can probably amuse yourself by looking at the sort of peaks and troughs depending on the day, and you may even see that certain days you'll see mobile traffic peak, whereas desktop traffic will go down, and you see this sort of pattern that often will sort of fill in the gap of the other. So I would say that it shouldn't be something that's a serious concern, especially when you cover the major tasks and scenarios that you want your users to accomplish on the mobile version of your site.
All right, thanks, Nick. And Matt, what do you think about how mobile is impacting desktop?
Well, I actually think it's pretty exciting, really, because like Nick mentioned earlier, on a mobile device, often they're touching it and they're sliding things, and it offers some potentially new formats that we haven't even discovered or wouldn't even be possible on a desktop machine that you're typically on a mouse or keyboard. So I think what you'll actually see is some really innovative formats start emerging for mobile devices, and that could be across apps and also mobile web. The other thing I want to touch on was the kind of apps piece. With mobile, you kind of have two paths. You have the web piece, and then you also have the apps piece. And when you think about apps, you can almost think of them as another kind of venue to get more users, or a venue to provide a really good experience for your users. So it's almost like a separate search engine in a sense when you're talking about an app store. People are going to app stores searching for things now. So you kind of need to consider both paths, web and apps. But overall, I think the idea of having a mobile device and the new potential opportunities it presents is actually very exciting for a lot of publishers.
Nice. Thanks, Matt. And Russ, what are your thoughts on the whole concept of cannibalization between mobile and desktop traffic? And is there anything that we can look at in Google Analytics?
Sure. So I mean, the reality we're all touching on is that we live in a multi-screen world now, and it's not just multi-screen; it's also multi-form factor where you have apps and web going on as well. And so Google Analytics is rolling out something that we call universal analytics, and publishers can opt in to this today. And essentially, it's the new backbone of Google Analytics. And what it lets you do is basically have a common reporting infrastructure across all of your different sites or apps or what have you. So Google Analytics has native SDKs for both web, or for app rather, and we have a feature that's in limited whitelist, so I can talk about it, but I can't say when it's actually launching, called User ID Override. And what that lets you do is if you're a publisher and you have
One of these sort of traditional approaches towards building a mobile site or a mobile-friendly version of your site was to have a dedicated mobile version of your site that you would then redirect users to based on, for example, the user agent of their actual device. This has several disadvantages to it. The first one is that you would have to keep updating the list of recognized devices as new devices came out, which obviously became a challenge as more devices came out. Keeping the content fresh and actually in sync between the two versions is also a challenge. And finally, when it comes to search engines, having different URLs for your site and the mobile version of your site is something that was a challenge as well. So this is really where responsive comes in. The idea behind responsive is that you use cascading style sheets logic to actually structure the content based on the screen size and the screen resolution of the device that the user is using. This is a really flexible and great approach towards handling of like a huge variety of different phones with different screen sizes, tablets, sort of in between phones and tablets. These days there tends to be a continuous range of different screen sizes, resolutions you have to be aware of. Having a single URL also helps with search engine optimization, so that's a big advantage as well. Using CSS can also then help you to handle things like orientation changes. The Webmasters Central blog from Google has a lot of useful tips on how to actually build a good responsive website. And for those of you who haven't been keeping up with our blog, we actually have a beta feature in AdSense that we launched recently called AdSense Responsive Ad Units, which will allow you to dynamically specify the size of the ad creatives that you want served in an ad unit when you load the page initially. So that has actually gotten some pretty positive feedback. I know people are excited about it, and we're definitely excited to see people use it. In the future, we're going to tackle a couple of other changes and features that are associated with the responsive ad units, specifically being able to automatically determine how big an ad creative we should serve inside your content, and the second one being handling orientation changes, which is a scenario that was much requested, but we don't support at the moment.
All right.
Welcome back, Lori. I just jumped ahead and explained.
Perfect. I was definitely like, oh, I hope we were keep going. Sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of a connection error on our end. Just to help Matt and I figure out where we are, can you give us a brief recap of what questions we addressed? Elizabeth, were you able to weigh in on your perspective on mobile and desktop?
No, I actually didn't get a chance to talk about cannibalization. Do you want to go back to that, or just...
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So let's actually rewind a little bit and also collect, Elizabeth's thoughts on mobile and desktop and cannibalization. Elizabeth, how has this impacted WikiHow?
Cool. Can you hear me okay? There's a little bit of a... Okay, awesome.
Yep, we can hear you.
So as any publisher, we were super duper worried as mobile was starting to grow over the last couple years because we had spent so much time optimizing our desktop site for monetization, and mobile was an unknown for us, and it wasn't necessarily an area where we felt like we knew exactly how to make the most out of the traffic. And today mobile has actually grown to be almost 50% of our traffic, so we've had to fully embrace mobile and make sure that it's a huge priority for the company to think about mobile first instead of necessarily thinking about desktop first, because we actually think that mobile might pass desktop at some point in the future, which is pretty amazing. A little story. There used to be a time, obviously all sites have traffic patterns that you can observe throughout the week, where holidays would be kind of low days for WikiHow, and the theory around that was that people were not home, they were not searching, they were at the beach, they were having fun. And now holidays are actually some of our biggest days, and the theory there is, people aren't working and they're out, but they have their phones. And I think that just goes to show how if you embrace the mobile traffic and sort of accept that the world's changing and that you're going to be a publisher in the new world as it changes, that it can actually be something that's really like an exciting opportunity for growth for your site versus thinking about it as taking away from desktop. So it's a little bit of a different mentality, but I think it's great that it's growing so fast, and There's just so many opportunities to innovate there and still to make money there. I think that a publisher should try to embrace those versus trying to sort of bolster their desktop site.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's actually a really great way to think about it. It's a different mentality and a different approach as the industry is changing. So, now that we have a better understanding of the relationship between desktop and mobile, cannibalization, and also, Nick, thank you for jumping in, a little bit about responsive design, I'd love to go to our next question, which is, okay, let's say I have a mobile optimized website. What's next, right? How can publishers enhance their engagement or offering on mobile? For example, would your users benefit from integrating GPS? With that in mind, Matt, what do you think for this?
Well, I think Russ will probably actually really like my answer, but in general, I think you have to start with measuring it and understanding what things you care about most as a publisher. Is it reducing bounce rate or exit rate? Is it getting people to this certain page? Really identify those 3 or 4 metrics that are most important for your whole site, and then using that analytics program to really track what things you do and its impact on those kind of key performance indicators. So I think just setting up that kind of experiment kind of framework will actually allow you to really iterate quickly and also make a difference for kind of your users and your whole site in general. So I think that would just be my general recommendation about how you can improve your engagement.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Matt. And Nick, what are your thoughts on how publishers can enhance their mobile offering?
So we touched upon this previously today. One of the other venues is for publishers to consider building an app that'll allow them to surface content and unlock certain scenarios that they simply may not be able to execute on a website. The reality is there is also platform limitations, both from a browser point of view and each individual mobile device operating system point of view. But if there's high-value scenarios that would involve integrating with things like the camera, GPS, maybe payment, some sort of payment service or app, other apps on the phone that may be present, these are things that an app could deliver, whereas a browser-based sort of mobile website may not be able to do. And it's something just to consider. I think if there are high-value scenarios, you should consider investing in building a mobile app in addition to the mobile website.
All right. Thanks, Nick. And Russ, is there any way that we can use Google Analytics to kind of understand what we can do to enhance the mobile offering?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot that you can use Google Analytics for in this area. But by way of example, Google Analytics itself has a native Android app. And we recently put out an update to it. And how we got to this point was we basically watched how our users were using Google Analytics by using Google Analytics on Google Analytics. And we wanted to make an app that basically put the key metrics front and center, and so that our users could quickly get what they need on a mobile form factor, get in and get out. And so we had a first version of the app that did that. But using Google Analytics, we were watching, how long people were engaged in terms of average session duration, and we were watching how many screens people were going to. And what we wanted to do was basically reduce the number of screens that the users had to view to get at their key metrics. And so by basically implementing and iterating on design changes, the most recent version of the app we've launched, and we've seen almost 1 fewer screen view per session, which is a good thing, while at the same time the duration that people are interacting with the app has gone up by almost a full minute. So you can really use those insights both on web and in apps to really inform your design. The key thing, though, is to keep in mind what your goals are in terms of how you want your users engaging with your properties, be it on the web or in mobile.
All right. Thanks, Russ. And Elizabeth, how have you enhanced the offering on mobile, and what would you suggest for our publishers tuning in?
Yeah, I think what Russ said just now about knowing what your goals are is a great way to focus your energy and figure out what you want to accomplish. So for us, after we got readership down on mobile to the point where we felt like the experience of consuming a how-to was really, really good, we started to think about going back to the fact that we're a wiki and that we like when people contribute and add their own personal knowledge to articles. How could we actually get contributions on mobile, knowing that, of course, no one's going to take the time with their 2 fingers to type out a whole article or make huge major contributions. So we've done little iterative things to that end. We added check marks to our steps so you can sort of check things off as you're going along. We actually have a box on our articles where a user can submit a tip. So a tip is just, one sentence of information where someone can actually help another person, but again, without needing a whole keyboard. And so for us, it was sort of thinking a la what Russ said about what we wanted. We wanted a little bit more user engagement, a little bit more interactivity, while still keeping the user experience really, really solid, and thinking about what sort of steps we could take to enhance the experience on mobile on WikiHow without making it difficult to use or unsuited for a phone anymore.
Right. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's definitely great points. Keep in mind your users and your content and what they're going to be doing on their phones. With that in mind, that's actually the end of the question. So what I'd like to do next is kind of go around the room. I know mobile is a very big topic and there's a lot of things that you can do. So I'd love to really go around the room and understand if there's one key takeaway that publishers could have from this session, what would it be? And Elizabeth, what do you think? What are your final words of wisdom?
Yes, my final words of wisdom. Mobile's a huge opportunity. I would definitely think of it as a way to get more users and more interaction on your site, and a really, really neat opportunity to expand what you're doing, and an opportunity you can't ignore because it's going to happen anyway. Learn as much as you can about what makes a great user experience or what helps you achieve your goals on mobile. Don't try to do everything on mobile that you're trying to do on desktop. It's okay to make sacrifices and sort of put things on a list as we can and just follow your instincts and the data around that, and you'll end up with a great mobile site.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. And Matt, final words of wisdom?
Well, I actually think Elizabeth put it really well earlier in that the sooner you can start embracing what mobile brings to the table, the better your mobile experience will be and the better it will be for users, because in the end, the space is changing really fast. There's going to be a lot of new things, and the quicker you can find out what leverage points you have with your users, the better the experience will be.
All right, thanks. And Russ, from a Google Analytics perspective, final thoughts?
Sure. So first of all, if you're an AdSense publisher, you definitely want to link your AdSense account to your Google Analytics account because it's a pretty quick process and it unlocks a whole bunch of new reporting inside of Google Analytics directly tailored for the publisher experience. So that's the one. And second is Google Analytics is obviously known really well for what it does for websites. But if you're not already using it for your mobile native apps, I would encourage everyone to check that out. So we have native SDKs for both iOS and Android, and it's the same, free, easy-to-use solution that we've had on the web, but now optimized specifically for mobile apps. So you get app profiles with custom reporting and everything all the way down to crash reporting, for example. So encourage everybody out there to give that a try.
All right, sounds good. And Nick, final thoughts on mobile? Hey guys, can you hear me?
We can now.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on today. We keep getting kicked off. Nick, can you give us any final thoughts you have on mobile or what publishers should be looking into? Nick, I think you might be on mute. No? Okay. All right, I'm not sure how we can troubleshoot this, so I'm sorry. I think we're actually going to try to wrap up this session. Thank you guys so much for sticking through it. I hope this has been helpful. A few quick reminders actually before we go. There won't be a Hangout on air tomorrow, but we definitely encourage you to take this time to look at the Test Your Knowledge worksheets, look at your website, look at your Google Analytics, see what's going on from mobile and from desktop, and get an understanding of what you could do next. Secondly, let us know what you think of this week's activities. We have the check-in survey that's available on the Google Plus event page right now in the details section if you click Read More. Let us know what works, what doesn't, what you wish we spent more time on, and what you wish you could hear more about. That's definitely going to help us improve as we move forward. And finally, next week is the last week of the AdSense 10 Challenge. We're going to be talking about Google Plus, so make sure to tune in then. And with that in mind, Elizabeth, Nick, Russ, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun. And for those of you tuning in right now, I'll see you at office hours on Friday. Bye.